Well, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on what time of day that you're watching this, or just simply good hello. I am determined to make good hello a thing. So, this is going to be a brief, hopefully, video over our reinforcer survey project. So, let me go ahead and share my screen with you so we can get started. All right, so on our first night of class, we will be going over a video, or not a video, but a PowerPoint. We may have already done it, depending on when it is that you were looking at this PowerPoint or this video that we're discussing now. So, the reinforcer survey. The purpose of a reinforcer survey is to help in determining what categories, at least when we're looking at a forced choice survey, what categories of reinforcers may serve to be effective for an individual or a group of students. So sometimes when we try to determine what a student might be willing to work for, or what might be a motivator for the student, we just ask them, we give them an open-ended question. And that could result in some very interesting things, things that we may not be able to deliver on. And then they'll be like, well, why did you ask me if you weren't going to give me anything that I said? So the idea behind a forced choice survey is not to be able to identify does a child prefer Snickers or Twix or Rolos or Twizzlers. It's a matter of determining what category of reinforcers the child likes better. So for your forced choice or your reinforcer survey project, we will be looking at a couple of different things. So let me first start by showing you what a forced choice, try saying that 5 times fast, a forced choice survey looks like. So let me drag and drop that onto the screen. So a forced choice reinforcement survey is used to identify possible classroom reinforcers. And it's important to go directly to the source, namely the student, obviously. So like I said, we're trying to determine what that student or group of students might find as reinforcing or motivating for them. So instead of being an open-ended, like I said, you're going to have a group of actually 40 pairs of choices, right? So like say, for example, teacher writes 100 on your paper or be first to finish your work. I might not necessarily want either one of those things, but I'm still going to check between the two, which one would I prefer? And you notice after each statement, there's a letter, right? So those letters, and you'll see that some of these things are repeated. So here again in number 6, now we have teacher writes 100 on your paper, or classmates ask you to be on their team. So but here we had category A and category CM. This one we have category A and category P. So you're going to have to repeat it again. So even on number 3, you have teacher writes 100 on your paper again, but this time we're comparing it to category I. So what we're looking to get to, and here it is again compared to category CN, by the way. So what we're working to get to once we get through all 40 choices is we're going to tabulate, or you're going to tabulate, what their totals were. So you're going to add up every time a CM was chosen, and you would write down how many times the student chose competitive approval. You'll write down, tally up how many times A was chosen, or, those items with the A after it. And then that's when you're going to tally how many times they had adult approval. So the categories we're looking for here are adult approval, competitive approval, peer approval, independent rewards, and consumable rewards. So all those candies that I named at the beginning, those would all kind of fall under consumable rewards. But instead of us just determining what kind of candy, it's about looking at, is consumable rewards even the best category to use for that child for a reinforcer, or for that group of students as a reinforcer. All right, so I wanted to make sure that I touched on that first. So on our first night of class, we go through and we talk about a major assignment. So this slide here is from that first night's PowerPoint. And so you will use the forced choice survey, and I'll show you where to find that on our content page in just 1 second. You're going to administer the reinforcer survey that I just showed you to a group of no less than 10 similar age students. What do I mean by similar age? They don't all have to be 7-year-olds. But we don't want a group of 5-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 18-year-olds. So you don't want, as far as trying to make comparisons and look for trends and patterns, if my group isn't similar, then it's not necessarily it would be difficult to determine if the reason for the change is just because of the age. So we want to look at a similar age of individuals. Like I said, it doesn't have to all be all first graders or all third graders, but similar in age. You're going to enter your data into an Excel spreadsheet, create two graphs using Excel and analyze the data you collected. I'll explain the two graphs in just a second. You will submit a PowerPoint presentation, and we're going to go over the rubric for you in just a second. The Excel, you'll upload the PowerPoint presentation. The rubric tells you exactly what needs to be in there. And then you're also going to upload your Excel where you had your tabulated results from that reinforcer survey, and that you will use that Excel also then to create those two graphs. All right, so let me close out of this one. Like I said, I just wanted to refer back to our PowerPoint from our first night so that way we would have that as our frame of reference. And now we'll jump into our actual PowerPoint for just specifically for this assignment. So reinforcer survey project is what we're looking at. So again, this is the forced choice survey that I just showed you a second ago. And these are the categories of reinforcers that we're looking at. Like I said, not just simply a specific reinforcer, but categories. And part of the reason for that is that, say, for example, if I do like consumable rewards, but after a while, I only want so many Jolly Ranchers. After a while, it's going to lose its appeal. It's kind of like Thanksgiving dinner. I love turkey and dressing, but after about day 3 of leftovers, I don't want it anymore, right? It's lost its appeal. So if consumable rewards is something that works for me or is effective for me, then once I've had those Jolly Ranchers and I'm tired of those, then you might then switch to something else within that same consumable rewards. So it's about looking at, like I said, the category instead of a specific type of candy or a specific person or a specific using the iPad. It's about looking at, do we prefer independent rewards? Do we prefer peer approval, competitive approval? What is it that we prefer? All right. So the forced choice reinforcer survey, I kind of already explained it. Why do we do this? So it provides us with valuable insight as to what type of rewards and incentives a student desires or prefers. And that says a student, but it could also be a group of students. It gives us direct feedback from the students' perspectives, quick, easy to administer. Anyone can administer the survey, or the student can take it on their own. So if the student is old enough and they can read through those 40 sets of pairs on their own and understand what it is that you're asking them to do, you can hand it to them and they can take it on their own. Otherwise, you might be able to sit with a student or a group of students, you read aloud and direct them through completing it. Or depending on the age of the student, you might actually read through all of them and you record all the responses for them. Absolutely easy to score and interpret, and it gives us good data for developing behavior plans and reward or incentive systems. This information on this slide and the next are coming from PBIS World. So when do you do this? So usually we go to looking at a forced choice reinforcer survey when students are not responding to other rewards or other systems, or just the typical what we're doing with everybody else or for everybody else. When a student needs a little bit more, when they need something more individualized. So when nothing is seeming to motivate that student, when they seem disinterested in schoolwork, when they're not following directions, when they're not following rules or expectations. If we're looking at developing a behavior intervention plan, which of course you're doing also for this assignment, so you might want to look at what are we going to use as far as reinforcers for that student. When you need to know what motivates a student, what kind of rewards they prefer, and what they might be more willing to work for. So when they can't directly express or not sure what kind of reward that they would work for. Or when students express that they don't care about rewards. And so if you need additional support in trying to determine what might be a good starting place, this would be something you could use. So if you look at our course calendar, you'll see that this assignment is listed under week 4. So week 4 means that it's due week 5. Okay, so these are the things that you're working on. It says in this column, everything in this side here is then due by the next class session. So that will be due on week 5. So the reinforcer survey project. So on our iLearn page, if you click on content, things are a little color coded because, of course. So the reinforcer survey is in this kind of fuchsia-like pink color. And right now, yes, they all say hidden from students because obviously I'm making this video, so I didn't want you to be able to upload or, to be looking at the materials while I was still updating them and tweaking them a little bit. So they say hidden from you. They won't when you look for them after the video is finished. So the reinforce the survey information, look inside. That's where you're going to find tons of information, and we'll look in that in just a second. CEC standards. CEC stands for Council for Exceptional Children. The university works with in their accreditation process and looking at not just looking at just state standards, but also standards that are related to our field. And so when we think about special education, one of the areas that we might look to align with is the Council for Exceptional Children. And then, of course, the Dropbox for the assignment. So let me go ahead and show you just there for a second. When you click on that CEC standards, what it is that you're going to see. All right, let me drag and drop onto the right screen. All right, so if you were to click on that folder, one of the things that you're going to see will be Council for Exceptional Children. There's two different links in there. This one is for the initial preparation standards. And so when you look through there, you have standards. And so one of the things you're going to be doing for me on the last part of your assignment, in the reflection and the closure part as well, is you're going to be looking through all of the standards that are provided for you from CEC. And you're going to choose at least one, can be more, but at least one. And you're going to tell me how this assignment, this project, this experience, how that aligns with that standard. All right. So we've already looked at the forced choice survey. Let's take a brief look at the reinforcer survey rubric. So when we get ready to talk about the things that go into your assignment, one of the things I wanted to point out to you is that we may have just recently met, but you'll probably soon realize that I have both characteristics of some OCD and definitely characteristics of ADHD. So I am both scattered and have a huge need for structure and things that make sense and that have alignment in them and organization. So the rubric is very detailed, as is the color coding on the assignments and everything else. But anyway, so for this assignment, you will be turning in for me a PowerPoint and your Excel spreadsheet. If you look at your rubric, it's very specific. It says slide. First one, title. You're going to put on there your name, the course, the semester, any other heading information you want to give. And I'm very much in my mind, like I said, I'm a list person. I like to write things down. I like to check things off. So when I design my rubrics, I design them as if you might, and it's up to you, but you might choose to, print this off and then go through and self-check your assignment, hint, 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 before you turn it in. So that way you're double checking to make sure that everything's in there. Where this is a graduate level class and where I provide detailed explanation through this video that you're watching now, as well as the rubric, as the explanation on our syllabus, the explanation on our first night of class. I do not typically take resubmissions unless there's extenuating circumstances, because all of the information is there for you in advance. And literally I walk you through what goes on every single slide of this PowerPoint presentation that you'll be turning in. So first slide is the title. Second slide, and yes, it has parentheses and an S. That means it has to be at least one slide. However, if you choose to put it on more than one slide, that's perfectly fine. You just must have at least one slide. So you're going to describe your participants for me, their age, their gender, their grade, their race. If you know their IEP or their 504 status. If you don't know, that's perfectly fine. And the students do not have to have an IEP or a 504 to be included in this assignment. No, they don't have to be. But if you happen to know if they do have documented behavioral challenges, then that might be information that then is relevant when you're describing your participants. So like I said, if you know, and like I said, if you don't, it's fine. And no, it's not required that they have an IEP. So you will be creating for me two graphs. All right, two graphs. So you will use Excel. Once you tabulate all of the information from your forced choice survey, and you have these categories here at the bottom or at the end, and you're going to have your counts for that. I'm going to show you in a second what that looks like. You will use Excel then to create two graphs. Part of this assignment, one of the objectives is to make sure that you understand the importance in clarity and communication. So much like when I used to teach Algebra 1, and my students would get a hold of that TI calculator and they punch things in and they'll say, well, the answer to X equals, and they give me a number. It's like, no, how did you come up with that? It's like, well, the calculator told me. I'm like, no, you told the calculator. So the thing is that Excel will give you a graph. You can punch in all the numbers, do whatever you want to do, and click on whatever kind of graph you want, and Excel will give you that graph. The thing about it, though, is making sure that you're choosing a graph that effectively communicates your information. All right. So the way that I phrase this, definitely technical. I want one graph that's gobbledygook. And then I want one graph that effectively tells the story. What do I mean by that? So like I said, both of the graphs will be based on the exact same data set, the exact same information that you plugged into Excel. But I want you to choose one graph, and I'm going to show you an example in a second, that although it is accurate, it doesn't effectively communicate the data. The other graph on the other hand, will effectively communicate the data. And so you're going to then on the next graph, explain to me why one is better suited than the other to communicate the information. All right. After that, you will have a slide or multiple slides of analysis of your data, discussion of your careful study of your data. What were the results? And don't just tell me the numbers. I've already got your Excel. Include the numbers, yes, but don't just tell me the numbers. Include the numbers, but discuss it. Reflect on it. Discussion reflects an accurate completion of the survey. And don't use ambiguous terms like most or some. Quantify things, include data, numbers, percent, overall group preference. So when you looked at that group of individuals, how much variance was there between the most preferred category and the second preferred category? Did all of the boys tend to want one category and the majority of the girls tend to want the other one? What was the variance there? So use numbers to explain that. So yes, give me the numbers from what you collected, but don't just give me the numbers. I can read the graph. I want to know that you understood and that you were able to draw from and make meaning from the data that you collected so that way you'd be able to do something with it. The interpretation, again, we're looking now at patterns. What does that data tell you about the students? What are their similarities among the genders? How could this data be used? So in the analysis part, you're describing the data. You're digging into it. It's like when you taste a delicious bowl of soup and you're sitting here thinking of all the elements that you taste. You're thinking of the chicken broth. You're thinking of the hint of thyme and rosemary and all of the other good things. And so you're thinking about all the different flavors. And so you're telling me all that in analysis. Then the interpretation, you're telling me, why did those things go together? How did combining the thyme with the marjoram and this and that, and how did that then make your palate sing and dance? And so the interpretation, you tell me, so what does that tell you? The data is you're telling me what you found. The interpretation is saying, okay, now what? So what? What do I do with that? What does that tell me? Right? And then the reflection. How did the results compare to what you expected? So say, for example, if I am administering the survey to a group of, let's just say, high school football players that are out to win, the district championship, I might assume that they're all going to score high on competitive approval, right? Because they're, a group of young men that are working to win, they're driven by that success, that challenge to win. So I might assume that they're going to all score high in their area of competitive approval. So what I want to know is, did it line up with what you assumed? Did it line up with what you expected? And then also, what did you learn from this experience? What did you learn from the assignment? How will it affect what you do moving forward? How will you be able to use it moving forward? And then, like I mentioned earlier, the CEC standards, Council for Exceptional Children, at least one, can be more, but at least one of the standards. And points for making sure that you've administered to at least 10 individuals, similar age. You get points for just simply uploading your raw data as well. So in this assignment, one assignment, 2 files. So one submission, you're going to upload a PowerPoint presentation and your Excel spreadsheet. So 2 files. All right. And then writing expectations. This is absolutely not an APA paper. It's a PowerPoint. However, you should still make sure that you've checked for grammar, that you've checked for spelling, that you've checked for typos, and that you've made sure that there's clarity in thought and that you're clearly communicating what it is that you're trying to share with me. All right. Let's go back to our PowerPoint. So this is the information on our content page. And so, like I said, the reinforcer survey information, look inside. if you were to delve inside, you will find the link to this video, which obviously you're watching now, the link to the PowerPoint that's used in this video, the Reinforcer Survey rubric, which we just went over, and then the forced choice Reinforcer survey that you're going to be using. And then there's some other resources there for you as well. All right. In addition to that, right below it is where you would find the CEC standards. And like I said, there's 2 files in there. This one you won't be able to see. We're not using that right now. But the 2 files that you'll be able to see are the initial preparation and the initial specialty. And then you will be looking at, below that is the Dropbox where you will be submitting your assignment. All right. So this is just a slide that shows you the same thing, but I showed you in real time. All right. So your Reinforcer survey project, what's my first step? Well, what's your first step? So like I said before, you're going to administer it to a group of at least 10 children. I understand that with summer semesters, being able to access children, being able to get into the classroom is a challenge. So because of that, for summer semesters, I do allow a little creativity, a little flexibility, a little grace, a little understanding. So you can administer it in person, by phone, through video conference, or using Google Forms. The choice is yours, as long as a minimum of 10 children, school-age children, and preferably similar age. Be sure that each survey participant selects only one. So out of those 2 choices, make sure that they're not marking every single box, but they're choosing just one. And that when you tabulate your results for each participant, make sure that it aligns with the fact that there's 40 sets of pairs. So for every participant, I should have 40 responses. If I have 45, that means that they double counted. If I only have 32, that means that they skipped some. So make sure that you have the correct amount of responses for the survey. Again, this is a picture of what I'm talking about here. So when we tabulate and we add up, then I would be looking at for each individual student as well as for the group, the categories. Next step, enter your results into an Excel spreadsheet. Using Excel, like I said, you're going to create 2 graphs. One that effectively paints the picture and communicates the data. The other one that's gobbledygook, that although it's based on accurate data, it doesn't do an effective job at communicating that data. This is an example of what that might look like. Yes, I know I told you 10, and this is only 5. Part of that is because it's an example. The other part of that is because the more you put in here, the harder it is to see it on screen. So I wanted to make sure that you'd be able to see it on screen. So I'm using the Mickey Mouse Club gang. So we've got Mickey, Minnie, Daisy, Donald, and Goofy. And so you'll see that Mickey absolutely cares nothing about what his peers thinks. He's absolutely driven by competition. Adults, he might listen to us a little bit as far as our influence, making a little bit of difference to him, right? So you'll notice that if I tabulate all of those up, they're 40. You will also notice that under each individual category for each individual student, there is never one more than 16. 16 is the max number when you tabulate that you should have for any category. All right. So Minnie, on the other hand, is not at all competitive. Minnie is very much driven by the approval of adults. She is also interested in what her peers think of her. She's not much on doing things alone. And, sweets are good, or consumable rewards in general. Daisy is much like Minnie, at least in this category. I don't think in the real cartoon she is. But in my example here, Daisy chose the adult approval 16 out of 16 times, the peer approval 16 out of 16 times. Not once did she choose competitive. She only chose the independent twice, and she chose consumable rewards 6 times. So you'll see here an example for each of those. Because there's 5 on here, my total is 200. 40 choices or 40 pairs times the 5 gives me 200. For yours, this should be 400. By the way, if you so choose, you can absolutely administer this to more than 10 students. 10 students is your minimum, but you may absolutely administer it to more than 10 if you so choose. I've had students in the past that administered it to an entire 4th grade class. I've even had students in the past who've got together with their colleagues at work and gave it to an entire grade level in their school because they were working on a program for reinforcement and working with their students as a whole grade level team. So 10 is your minimum, but absolutely could be more. So 2 graphs. Although this one is super pretty, I love purple happens to be my color. Although this one is super pretty, it's not real easy to understand, not really easy to read. So when I look at this, yes, I've got the names going along the bottom here. Well, that's good. I've got the categories here and they've got colors. So when I'm looking at adult approval, I can tell that Daisy chose it more, definitely more than Donald and Goofy, but it's hard to really get a feel for Mickey, for example. What is Mickey's preference? I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's not that easy. I look at this, however, a histogram or a bar graph, I can have all of my students lined up, right? And so I can very easily look, I've got the students across the bottom again, just like on the other one. I've got the color coding on the bottom again. And so I can say for adult approval, well, Donald and Goofy, not at all, right? Not at all, as far as that adult approval. So I can look at each one of mine individually, but then it also paints a good group here. So like if I'm trying to figure out something to work on with that entire Mickey Mouse gang, I'm going to say that I'm probably going to go with consumable rewards. And that my second would have been peer approval. Knowing though that that's not probably going to be very effective for Mickey, right? But as a group, that would be what I would choose. All right, so this is how I would look and differentiate between the two. And so the bad graph, or the, not that it was wrong, because it's absolutely the same data set, but it's harder to interpret. This one is a lot easier to interpret. So one slide for the bad graph, one slide for the good graph, and then one slide that you're going to explain to me why one is better suited than the other. So you're going to create your PowerPoint. You're going to refer to that rubric that I already showed you that tells you slide, 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 tells you exactly what you have to have on all the slides, what order they go in. It's all laid out there for you. Make sure that you include all of the requirements and make sure that you proofread your work. Again, this is the rubric that we already went over, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time going over it again. But like I said, it is very much very detailed, tells you exactly what needs to go onto each graph. Onto each slide. And remember the S in parentheses means it's optional for you to add additional slides. Not required, but absolutely your choice, your option. Don't forget the CEC standards. That's 5 points for just simply including a standard, could be more, but at least a standard, and then explaining to me how that aligns with this assignment. All right. Don't forget your reflection, where you're including for me how the results compared with what you were expecting. And then, of course, also what you learned from this experience. Okay. So this is again showing you where, and I already showed you in real time exactly where to find those CEC standards, where to find the information for the reinforcer survey, and where to turn it in. And again, those are the two things that you'll be able to see in the CEC standards folder. And then remember, at least 10 students, can be more, but at least 10 students. And like I said, for summer semesters, I'm absolutely giving grace and understanding and flexibility. I know it's difficult to get a hold of students in the summer. So like I said, you can use a non-traditional means is what we'll call them, as far as, working through in person, by phone, by video conference, Google Forms, any of those methods that you might choose. And remember to upload your Excel data sheet along with your PowerPoint. Also, a reminder, it's in the syllabus, but I also wanted to remind you that the format must be PowerPoint, Excel, or PDF. I cannot open anything on a MacBook, anything that was created that's Apple-based, and Chromebooks sometimes have weird things as well. So just make sure that it's in a format that can be opened by someone on a PC based. So PowerPoint and Excel are the two forms. One upload, two forms. So it's even here on your Dropbox, underlined and bold. It says 2 attachments, PowerPoint presentation, and Excel spreadsheet. All right. So final steps. Double check your work, please. Triple check your work, please. Resubmissions, like I said, there shouldn't be a need, right? So be sure your spreadsheet file is in either Excel or PDF format, as well as your slide presentation being in either PowerPoint or PDF. And be sure to upload both files in the Reinforcer Survey Dropbox for that one submission. And this is where you find the Dropbox. All right. So hopefully, let me stop sharing. Hopefully that answered all of the questions that you might have or will have or think that you might have in regard to your assignment. And hopefully, well, I'm not going to say hopefully. I have full confidence that you'll be successful in completing it. If you get stuck, even after the resources that I provided, please reach out in advance, not necessarily afterwards. All right. So take care. God bless. And I'll see you guys soon. Good night or good morning, good afternoon. Just goodbye. Take care. See you soon.